You know, some battles, they're over in just a few seconds. But the fighting, for the soldiers involved, that can go on for a lifetime. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of a single tank duel in World War II, a fight caught on film that made one man a hero. But it was a second fight, just hours later, that would haunt him for the next 68 years. Let's get into how a moment of triumph became a lifetime of guilt. Okay, so picture this. It's March 6th, 1945. The city of Cologne, Germany is just a ruin. And inside a brand new, top-of-the-line American tank, a 21-year-old named Clarence Smoyer is staring through his gun sight. He's watching a German Panther, one of the most feared tanks of the war, take aim at a different American tank. The Panther fires, twice. 3 American crewmen are gone, just like that. And for Smoyer, the real fight is just about to kick off. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Clarence Smoyer wasn't some natural-born warrior. He was a kid from coal country. He went rabbit hunting once as a boy and felt so sick about it he never did it again. So how in the world does a guy like that find himself in the middle of one of the most famous tank duels ever recorded? Well, the answer doesn't start with the man. It starts with the machine he was driving. To really get why Smoyer's fight was such a huge deal, you have to understand the absolutely grim reality for American tankers in 1944. Their main ride, the M4 Sherman, had let's call it a serious problem when it went up against German armor. It was completely outmatched, and the crews were paying for it with their lives. The GIs had a nickname for their own tank, a really dark one, the Ronson Lighter. You know, after the cigarette lighter with the slogan, "Lights up the first time, every time." It was a horrifying joke based on a terrifying fact. If a Sherman got hit, you had maybe a few seconds to get out before the whole thing went up in flames. It was a 33-ton steel death trap. And I mean, just look at the raw numbers here. This wasn't a fair fight. The German Panther was 10 tons heavier, it had more than double the frontal armor, and its gun could punch a hole in a Sherman from a distance where the Sherman's shells would literally just bounce right off the Panther. It was a truly deadly imbalance. For years, the top brass back in the States argued the Sherman was good enough. But after the catastrophic losses in Normandy, and especially during the Battle of the Bulge, it was painfully obvious something had to change. So, in January of 1945, a secret weapon finally arrived in Europe, the first 20 M26 Pershing heavy tanks. And wouldn't you know, Clarence Smoyer's crew was one of the very lucky few to get one. And the difference in power was, well, it was insane. There's this great story from a test fire. Smoyer's commanding general, a guy named Maurice Rose, was standing behind the Pershing. Smoyer fires the massive 90mm cannon, and the muzzle blast is so powerful, it literally knocks the general and his whole staff flat on their backs. Rose gets up, brushes himself off, and just grins. Yeah, the Pershing was ready for combat. So let's get back to the main event. We're back in the rubble of Cologne. Remember that Panther that took out the Sherman? Well, it's still out there. It's hiding, lying in wait for its next target, right there in the shadow of the city's massive, historic cathedral. The Panther has the main street totally locked down. It's a perfect ambush. But Smoyer's commander, Robert Early, he's clever. He spots another way. And get this, at the same time, a Signal Corps cameraman named Jim Bates is setting up his camera to film the action. So as the camera rolls, Early sends Smoyer's Pershing, nicknamed Eagle 7, down a side street to try and hit the Panther on its weaker side armor. What happens next is it's over in a flash. Smoyer's tank rolls into the intersection. He fires. The first shot hits the Panther, but doesn't take it out. 5 seconds later, a second shot. This one punches right through the side. 6 seconds after that, the third shot, and the Panther erupts into a fireball. The entire duel, from start to finish, took exactly 11 seconds, and Jim Bates caught the whole thing on film. And just like that, with their most powerful defender gone, the German resistance in the heart of the city just collapsed. For all intents and purposes, the battle for Cologne was over. A massive win for the new Pershing tank and its crew. But for Clarence Smoyer, the man behind the gun sight, the most difficult fight of his entire life was still to come. The war of steel and fire was ending, but the war inside his own head was just about to begin. Later that very same day, Smoyer and his crew kept pushing deeper into the city. And it's here, in the chaos, that a tragic, confusing moment unfolds, one that would plant a seed of guilt that would stay with him for almost 70 years. So they're moving down this street, and suddenly, a black car just tears across an intersection right in front of them. In the heat of battle, you have to assume the worst. Smoyer opens fire with his machine gun. But at the exact same moment, a hidden German panzer tank also fires at the car. The car screeches to a halt, a door opens, and a woman falls onto the pavement, killed in that horrible crossfire. Now, Smoyer's crew would eventually destroy that German tank, but that wasn't the part that stuck with him. It was the image of that woman. He never knew if it was his bullets or the German shell that killed her. It didn't matter. All he knew was that he had pulled the trigger. For the rest of his life, for 68 years, he had nightmares about it, waking up convinced he was right back on that street. Decades just roll by. Smoyer lives a good life, raises a family, but that shadow from Cologne is always there. Finally, in 2013, at 89 years old, he decides he has to go back. He needs to find out who that woman was, and he needs to find her family to ask for their forgiveness. A German journalist actually helps him identify her, a 26-year-old woman named Katharina Esser. A meeting is arranged with her family at her gravesite. But when Smoyer gets there, he finds another old man waiting for him. And this is the incredible part. It's Gustav Schäfer, the machine gunner from the German tank. The other man who fired on the car, who had been carrying the very same burden, the same guilt for 68 long years. And right there, at the grave, this simple, profound human moment happens. Smoyer, frail by now, loses his balance, and Schäfer, his former enemy, reaches out and catches him. Can you just imagine that? Two men who tried to kill each other, now literally holding each other up. And in that moment, standing together, they realized neither of them was solely to blame. They shared the weight of it. And in that shared responsibility, they finally found a path to peace. And they didn't just find peace, they actually became close friends. They wrote letters, they video called each other across the Atlantic. When Gustav passed away in 2017, Clarence sent flowers to the funeral. The note he included says it all. "I will never forget you. Your brother in arms, Clarence. From enemies to brothers." That duel by the Cologne Cathedral, it's a famous piece of military history, a story of tactics and steel. But the real story, the deeper one, is about the battles that rage on long after the guns go quiet. And it leaves us with a pretty heavy question to think about. When we tally up the costs of war with all the lists of the dead and wounded, who's keeping track of the casualties of conscience?